are linked to the type of question we ask. If you indeed ask a question, what's out there, and you show this, okay, because that's out there. But if you have a question, okay, what is everything related to traffic, then probably you have to show a selection. And you have to have these opportunities, and in the maps and visuals we will create, we will have to make sure that all the options to select and filter are available. Okay, what I would like to do you now is to take you back in time a little bit and sketch the history we have been going through to reach to the point which I showed you all these examples of. So in the graph I show you on one axis, the horizontal axis, you see the timeline, and from top to bottom we will see that there is an increase in the amount and diversity of data. So in the past, and still today, we had cartography, and most of you will be familiar with it. It deals with making maps. If you think of a definition, it would be something like the art and science of making and using maps. And of course, when the discipline developed, it also borrowed from other disciplines. Geography played an important role, surveying played a role, but also design and art to create good graphics. The result is a map, and a map offers you information. It tells you how to go from A to B, it tells you where to find the best soils to grow certain crops, etc. The next step in the development, since the 80s, the computer is being used in our discipline. And here we can see that again we borrowed from other disciplines some useful items, and they relate to exploratory data analysis, that has to do with including statistics, scientific visualization, it has to do with using computational methods to deal with lots of data, to be able to present the data in the third dimension, and from human-computer interaction. And that all has to do with how we develop our interfaces. And again, in the computer world you can think of the difference between, let's say, the Windows type of computers and the Apple designed computers, which are known for a pleasant and useful interface. That doesn't mean that the other doesn't work, but it might be easier to use. Now, in this context, the result is not just information, but also insight, because we are able to query the map. We can interact with the map. And you can click on a symbol, you get information from the database, you can measure some distances. So the information is not just from A to B, but it also tells you how long, it tells you where you might stop, get petrol, etc. Another step, and this happened relatively recently, let's say the last almost 15 years, is to develop into geovisualization. And I will explain in much more detail what this is in a few moments. But here we borrowed from a field called information visualization, where people, the main job in that field is to deal with large amounts of data. And again, we improved that not only we got information from those maps or insight, but, and I will explain why this is the case, we also were able to retrieve knowledge from the graphics, because you're able to combine with other information you already know, and that will be explained later on. And the latest development, and that happens only a couple of years, is what we call geovisual analytics. And what does it mean? And again, at the end of my lecture I will explain in more detail what it is, but here we borrow from the latest trend called visual analytics. And that results not only in knowledge, but also in reasoning. It means that we don't only have the knowledge, but we do things with this knowledge. We share it and we just debate it with other people. Now, why is that necessary? If you think back of the problems I've shown at the beginning, related to flooding, traffic, climate and things like this, it's clear that no single discipline is able to solve these problems on its own. You have to cooperate with other disciplines, with other knowledge. You have to bring teams of people together to be able to think of solving these problems. And in doing so, each discipline brings in its own knowledge, And then together they have to reason about their different fields of knowledge and come to a certain conclusion on how they think they can start solving these problems. So that's why this picture is also important. Now, what I would like to do next is illustrate this picture using maps. And it's a very simple example. By the way, I would like to point to the activities of the International Cartographic Association here, where several committees have been active in bringing this field forward. So here we see those 4 boxes again: information, insight, knowledge, and reasoning. So what about this? Let's again look at some examples. So we thought about cartography. Well, it's very simple. You just make a map. In this case, the question might be, where is a certain town? And then you get a map with a big dot on it, or an arrow pointing on the map where that location is. Or you get a detailed map of that particular location. That's just the basic information. If you can do a little bit more with those maps, we get into this insight domain. What does it mean? The question is different. So you could ask, what about this town? So you get other information as well, and then you might find out that this particular town is related, in this case, to some water sports. So some boats are there, and you see a harbor and you see a canal. I mean, this is a typical Dutch example. So you have canals, sorry, we have lots of those. But again, it just increases the insight. It not only tells you where it is, but it also tells you what it is. But then, of course, you have more questions. So what is then the character of this town? So you would like to combine certain information and insight into knowledge. So you might look at the pattern, spatial pattern of the town, and then it's recognized as this town looks like a fortification. And again, this is a typical Dutch example, and this is how Dutch fortified cities looked like in the 16th century. And in India they probably look completely different. I must admit I'm unaware of that, but I will certainly believe that they are there. And then you see different types of visualizations how to do this. But now, how about the next step? How about this reasoning? Then the question might be, it looks more simple, but it's more complex in a way. You could ask, why is that town there? And then you have to combine knowledge of historians, maybe of economists, of geographers, and others, and they each bring in their knowledge, and they talk to each other, and then they can explain why this town is found at that particular location. So in this case, below the question, why Buxar